Kinshasa, Zaire. October 30th, 1974. 4 in the morning. 60,000 Africans filled the Stade du 20 Mai, chanting words that echoed through the humid night air like a war drum. Ali bomaye, Ali bomaye. In Lingala, the local language, it meant something simple, something primal. Ali, kill him. But as Muhammad Ali stood in his corner, sweat already glistening on his shoulders before the first bell had even rung, the world outside that stadium believed something very different. They believed he was walking to his own funeral. And honestly, they had every reason to think so. George Foreman was not just a boxer, he was a destroyer. At 25 years old, Foreman had compiled a record that read like a horror story for anyone foolish enough to step into the ring with him. 40 professional fights, 40 victories. 37 of those wins came by knockout. Not decision, not survival, complete and utter annihilation. His fists carried the weight of sledgehammers. His opponents didn't just lose, they were carried out on stretchers. Their dreams shattered along with their consciousness. Joe Frazier, the man who had handed Ali his first professional defeat, lasted less than 6 minutes against Foreman. 6 rounds of pure destruction. Frazier went down 6 times. 6 times he tried to get up. 6 times Foreman put him back on the canvas like a rag doll. Ken Norton, who had broken Ali's jaw just a year earlier, fared even worse. 2 rounds. Norton was unconscious before he knew what hit him. The boxing world looked at these results and came to a unanimous conclusion. George Foreman was unbeatable. He was young, he was hungry, and he hit harder than any heavyweight in history. Muhammad Ali, on the other hand, was 32 years old. Ali had been gone from boxing for 3.5 years during his prime, stripped of his title, banned from the sport, all because he refused to fight in Vietnam. "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong," he had said. And America made him pay for those words. When he finally returned, something was different. The dancing feet that had once made him untouchable were a half step slower. The reflexes that had frustrated the greatest fighters of his generation had lost a fraction of their magic. He had lost to Frazier. He had lost to Norton. His jaw had been wired shut for months, and now they wanted him to fight George Foreman. The odds makers in Las Vegas set the line at 4-1 against Ali. Some books offered 7. The smart money, all of it was on Foreman. Sports Illustrated published an article asking whether Ali should even be allowed to take this fight. The concern wasn't about his pride. It was about his life. But what nobody understood, what nobody could possibly understand, was that Muhammad Ali had been preparing for this moment his entire life. Not in the gym, not with his fists. In his mind. But Foreman suffered a cut during training, and everything was pushed back by 6 weeks. 6 weeks that changed everything. While Foreman sat in his compound, isolated, growing increasingly paranoid about the African heat and the hostile crowds, Ali did something unexpected. He went out, he walked through the streets of Kinshasa, he played with children, he shook hands with farmers, he became one of them. "I'm fighting for you," he told them. "I'm fighting for Africa." The people believed him, and they loved him for it. Every morning, thousands would gather outside his training camp just to catch a glimpse of him. Every evening, the chants would begin. Ali bomaye. It wasn't just support, it was worship. Foreman felt the difference. He was the champion. He was the undefeated destroyer. Yet when he walked through the streets, the children ran away. When he trained, the crowds watched in respectful silence, then left to cheer for Ali. Something was happening in Zaire that went beyond boxing. This wasn't just a fight for the heavyweight championship of the world. This was a referendum on black identity, on African pride, on the very meaning of greatness. And Ali understood this better than anyone. But understanding the spiritual significance of a fight doesn't help you when George Foreman's right hand is coming toward your skull at 40 miles per hour. For that, Ali needed something else entirely. The first round began at 4 a.m. local time, scheduled to accommodate American television audiences watching on closed-circuit broadcasts across the country. The air was thick, humid, oppressive, 90 degrees Fahrenheit with suffocating humidity that made every breath feel like drowning. 60,000 voices exploded as Ali danced to the center of the ring. And then he did something that shocked everyone. Instead of dancing, instead of floating like the butterfly he had always been, Ali walked straight toward Foreman and threw a right hand lead. The punch you're never supposed to throw first. The punch that leaves you wide open for a counter. Ali threw it anyway, and it landed clean. Foreman's head snapped back. The crowd erupted. Ali bomaye. For a moment, the impossible seemed possible. Ali was faster. His punches were landing. Maybe, just maybe, the critics were wrong. But then Foreman started to find his range. By the second round, the horror began to unfold. Foreman cornered Ali against the ropes and unleashed everything. Thunderous left hooks, devastating right hands, body shots that sounded like someone beating a side of beef with a baseball bat. Ali covered up, his arms protecting his face. But the punishment was relentless. Each blow seemed capable of ending the fight. Each connection made the ringside observers wince. "Get off the ropes," Angelo Dundee, Ali's trainer, screamed from the corner. "Get off the ropes, Muhammad." Ali didn't listen. Instead, he leaned back against the ropes, letting them absorb some of the impact, and he smiled. Between punches, in those fractions of seconds when Foreman's fists weren't crashing into his body, Ali whispered something into the champion's ear. "That all you got, George? That all you got?" Foreman swung harder. "My grandmother hits harder than that." Foreman's face contorted with rage. He threw more punches, bigger punches, every ounce of energy devoted to destroying this man who wouldn't shut up, wouldn't fall down, wouldn't die. What nobody knew, what nobody could possibly understand in that moment, was that Ali was executing a plan so crazy, so suicidal, that he hadn't even told his own trainers about it. He was letting George Foreman punch himself out. The strategy would later become known as the rope-a-dope. The name sounds almost playful, like a children's game, but there was nothing playful about what Ali endured that night. Round after round, he leaned against the ropes and absorbed punishment that would have hospitalized most men. Foreman's trainers saw what was happening. "He's tired, George. He's just covering up. Keep punching." So Foreman kept punching. Third round, fourth round, fifth round. Each round, more fury. Each round, more devastating combinations. And each round, Ali kept talking. "Is that the hardest you can hit? They told me you could punch, George." By the fifth round, something had changed. Foreman's punches, which had started the fight as sledgehammers, were becoming hammers, then mallets, then less. The African heat was destroying him. The humidity was stealing his oxygen, and Ali, this 32-year-old man who was supposed to be washed up, wasn't falling down. In his corner after the fifth round, Dundee was frantic. "What are you doing out there? You're getting killed." Ali looked at his trainer with calm eye. "I know what I'm doing. Trust me. Muhammad, please. Move. Dance." Ali shook his head. "Let him punch. He's emptying his tank." It was either the greatest tactical genius in boxing history, or the most elaborate suicide note ever written. There was no in-between. By the seventh round, the transformation was complete. Foreman was a shell of the destroyer who had entered the ring. His punches had no pop. His legs were gone. His arms hung at his sides like dead weights between exchanges. And still Ali talked. "Now it's my turn, George." Suddenly the old Ali reappeared. Jabs snapped Foreman's head back. Right hands found their target. Combinations that had seemed impossible 3 rounds earlier now landed with sickening regularity. The crowd sensed it. The chanting grew louder. "Ali bomaye, Ali bomaye." But Foreman was still standing, still dangerous. A single punch from those sledgehammer fists could still end everything. The seventh round ended with both men exhausted, damaged, but still fighting. As Ali returned to his corner, Dundee had stopped screaming. He had stopped questioning. He simply looked at his fighter with something approaching awe. "Whatever you're doing," he said quietly, "finish it next round." Ali nodded. But this time, something was different. Ali wasn't just defending. He was measuring, waiting. His eyes tracked Foreman's every movement, calculating, predicting. Foreman threw a lazy jab. Ali slipped it easily. Foreman threw a right hand. Ali rolled with it, absorbing almost nothing. And then, in a fraction of a second that would be replayed for the next 50 years, Ali saw his opening. Foreman's right hand had dropped. His chin was exposed. His legs were planted. Ali threw a right-hand counter that seemed to travel through time. It wasn't the hardest punch he'd ever thrown, but it was the most perfect. The leather connected flush with Foreman's jaw. George Foreman, the undefeated destroyer, the man who had knocked out everyone he'd ever faced, the most terrifying heavyweight since Sonny Liston, wobbled. Ali followed with a left hook, then another right. Foreman's eyes rolled back. His legs buckled. His massive frame began to topple like a redwood tree finally succumbing to gravity. He fell toward the canvas, his arms windmilling in a desperate attempt to find balance that no longer existed. The referee began counting. 1, 2, 3. Foreman tried to rise. His body wouldn't obey. 4, 5. The crowd was delirious. 60,000 voices, screaming in unified disbelief. 6, 7. Foreman made it to one knee, tried to push himself up. 8, 9. He couldn't make it. He collapsed again. 10. Muhammad Ali was the heavyweight champion of the world. Again, what happened next would be seared into the memory of everyone who witnessed it. Ali stood in the center of the ring, his arms raised, his mouth forming words that were drowned out by the pandemonium, but that everyone would come to know. I told you I was the greatest. I told you. The crowd poured over the barriers. Security was overwhelmed. Ali was lifted onto shoulders, carried through the mass of humanity like a conquering hero returning from war. In press rows around the world, journalists tore up the obituaries they had prepared. The story they had expected to write, the tragic end of a once great champion, was replaced by something they could barely comprehend. Muhammad Ali had done the impossible. At 32 years old, given up for dead, facing the most dangerous puncher in heavyweight history, he had not just survived, he had dominated. He had turned George Foreman's greatest strength into his fatal weakness. The rope-a-dope, Ali would later say with that famous grin. I had him throwing punches in the first round that he didn't want to throw until the fourth. By the fifth round, he had nothing left. It was genius disguised as madness, strategy dressed up as suicide, and it changed everything. The aftermath of the rumble in the jungle rippled far beyond the boxing world. For Africa, it was a moment of transcendent pride, one of their own. A man who had embraced the continent, who had walked among them as a brother, had defeated the unbeatable. The chants of Ali bomaye became a symbol of black excellence, of defiance, of possibility. For America, it was the beginning of Ali's transformation from controversial figure to beloved icon. The man who had been stripped of his title for refusing to fight in Vietnam, who had been called a traitor and a coward, was now, undeniably, the greatest heavyweight champion of all time. For George Foreman, it was the beginning of a different journey. Years later, he would find religion, become a preacher, and return to boxing in his 40s. He would always speak of Ali with respect, even reverence. He outthought me, Foreman admitted decades later. I had all the power in the world, but he had something I couldn't match. He had a plan, and he had the courage to execute it, even when it looked like he was losing. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about that night in Kinshasa was what it revealed about Muhammad Ali's understanding of himself and of greatness. He had spent his entire career telling the world he was the greatest. Most people assumed it was ego, showmanship, promotional genius. But in Zaire, Ali proved something different. He knew he wasn't the fastest anymore. He knew he couldn't dance for 15 rounds like he had in his 20s. He knew that if he tried to fight George Foreman the way everyone expected him to fight, he would lose. So he invented a new way to win. The rope-a-dope wasn't just a boxing strategy, it was a philosophy. It said, I will absorb your punishment. I will take everything you throw at me. And when you have exhausted yourself, when you have given me your absolute best and I'm still standing, then and only then, will I destroy you. It was the strategy of a man who understood that true greatness isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about being smart, more adaptable, more willing to suffer in pursuit of victory. At 4:58 a.m., on October 30, 1974, as the sun began to rise over Kinshasa, Muhammad Ali held the heavyweight championship belt above his head. He was 32 years old. He had been gone from boxing for 3.5 years. He had been given up for dead by everyone who claimed to understand the sport, and he had just accomplished the most miraculous comeback in boxing history. I told you, he said into the microphone, his voice hoarse from shouting, from absorbing punches, from being the great. I told you I was gonna shock the world. The crowd roared. Ali smiled, and somewhere in the back of his mind, he was probably already thinking about what came next. Because for Muhammad Ali, there was always something next, always another mountain to climb, always another doubter to prove wrong. But in that moment, on that morning, in the heart of Africa, surrounded by 60,000 people who loved him like a god, Muhammad Ali wasn't thinking about the future. He was simply being what he had always claimed to be, the great. 40 years later, When historians and boxing experts compile their lists of the most significant sporting events in human history, the Rumble in the Jungle appears near the top of everyone. Not just because of the result, not just because an underdog won, but because of what it taught the world about the nature of greatness itself. You don't have to be the strongest to win. You don't have to be the fastest. You don't even have to be the best. You just have to be smarter, more prepared, more willing to suffer, and most importantly, you have to believe in yourself when absolutely no one else does. That night in Zaire, Muhammad Ali wasn't just fighting George Foreman. He was fighting the entire world's expectations. He was fighting age. He was fighting doubt. He was fighting the ghost of who he used to be. And he won. Because that's what the greatest, they find a way.